They said, "Don't continue unless you're prepared to feel uncomfortable, not because what you're about to hear is offensive, but because it reveals so much. And once something is revealed, it cannot be ignored. It quietly changes the way you see everything that follows. This isn't an attack, nor an accusation, nor a judgment. It is the unveiling of a hidden human pattern most people participate in without realizing it. And once you recognize this pattern, your understanding of attraction, interest, and emotional connection will never be the same again. So stay with this until the end, because what comes later will reframe everything you thought you understood. Now let's start with number 1. 1. The invisible trap. I once witnessed someone profoundly thoughtful, emotionally intelligent, and deeply self-aware slowly unravel. Not in chaos, but in quiet surrender. She wasn't naive, she wasn't reckless, she wasn't desperate. She was deliberate, articulate, and self-aware. Yet she found herself caught in a subtle trap, emotionally entangled with someone who gave almost nothing. No clarity, no reassurance, no steady presence, only fragments, fleeting attention, measured absence, and instead of stepping back, her focus intensified. Her mind became a narrowing lens. Her emotional energy poured in deeper, almost compulsively. She wasn't chasing connection. She was chasing the sensation of being chosen. And this is where most people unknowingly lose their power. The irony was cruel and silent. The less she received, the more precious it became. Every pause, every gap, every distant gesture grew in significance, as if scarcity alone could breathe meaning into emptiness. Most people misunderstand this. They believe attraction is born from warmth, effort, and reliability. But the mind doesn't always respond to what is healthy. It responds to what is stirring, unpredictable, and unresolved. Uncertainty becomes a quiet puppeteer pulling the strings of attention. An invisible force the mind mistakes for depth. It sparks anticipation. It amplifies imagination. It twists absence into obsession. And what begins as subtle curiosity slowly transforms into craving, heavy and consuming. All because the mind has been trained to assign value to the unknown. This is the hidden truth about attraction. It rarely has to do with the other person. It is born in the gaps, the pauses, and the spaces where the mind is forced to fill in its own stories. And in that space, longing becomes intoxicating, uncertainty becomes thrilling, and the heart mistakes emptiness for significance. And if this feels familiar, stay with me, because this is only the beginning. 2. Why uncertainty feels powerful. When attention is constant, the nervous system rests, it breathes, it relaxes, it finds calm. But when attention flickers, wavers, and disappears unpredictably, the nervous system awakens. It becomes alert, it searches, it questions. The mind scans every detail, interprets every gesture, analyzes every pause. And the more effort it spends analyzing, the more significance it assigns. Not because what it studies is meaningful, but because effort itself creates the illusion of importance. This is not love. This is conditioning. Quiet, relentless conditioning that sneaks in through uncertainty. Dopamine does not flow evenly here. It surges, then crashes, then surges again. And in those unpredictable spikes, the brain finds excitement, anticipation, and stimulation. It begins to mistake tension for depth. Waiting feels precious. Silence feels mysterious. Distance feels profound. The longer this pattern continues, the more the mind links emotional discomfort with meaning, creating a dangerous addiction not to a person but to the pattern itself. The mind starts craving unpredictability. It confuses longing with importance, effort with virtue, absence with significance. Curiosity becomes obsession, intrigue becomes invisible chains, and the person holding attention often unknowingly becomes the keeper of someone else's peace without effort. And if you're still listening, this is where awareness begins to form. 3. Conditioning without words. Many people grow up learning quietly that being noticed equals being valued. Not through lectures, but through repetition. Approval starts to feel like proof of worth. Effort becomes a measure of importance. Endurance in discomfort becomes strength. Silence becomes a test. Distance becomes a puzzle. Struggle becomes depth. Longing becomes meaning. And emotional discomfort becomes virtue. This conditioning is invisible, persistent, and unexamined. And because it feels natural, it goes unquestioned. A delayed response, a fleeting glance, a moment of inattention becomes a signal, a measurement, a quiet chain. And the most dangerous part is that it feels earned. But it is often nothing more than a learned pattern shaped by repetition, expectation, and subtle social cues. And because it is invisible, it controls without resistance, teaching the mind to chase gaps, pauses, and absences, until one day this becomes the blueprint for every connection. And if you recognize yourself here, understand that awareness is the first step out. 4. Grounded philosophy enters the room. This philosophy does not demand suppression of desire, nor denial of emotion. Instead, it asks honest questions. One ancient thinker warned that the moment we allow another to govern our emotions, we quietly give away freedom. Not through force, but through attention and reaction. Desire becomes a leash, and the person holding it becomes the keeper of peace without knowing it. Calm, focus, and stability bend to someone else's presence or absence. This captivity feels voluntary and natural, which makes it dangerous. But strength is not in resistance, it is in examination. Why do I want this? What am I seeking? Does my peace depend on what I cannot control? And when answered honestly, the chains dissolve. 5. The uncomfortable truth. Attraction rarely comes from the other person. It comes from unresolved spaces within us. When self-approval is fragile, attention feels essential. When inner stability wavers, unpredictability feels intoxicating. When purpose is unclear, attention becomes a compass. The mind does not fall in love with people, it falls in love with what they represent. They become symbols, mirrors, placeholders for validation, relief, or worth. It is not them, it is the reflection we seek. Absence becomes meaningful, silence becomes deep, distance becomes significant. And the more the mind works to explain uncertainty, the more it believes value lives in scarcity. We think we want someone when we actually want completion. Once this is seen, everything changes. Unpredictability loses power. Attention no longer defines worth. Attraction becomes calm, deliberate, and grounded. 6. Why calm feels boring to the unsettled mind. Uncertainty feeds imagination. Silence becomes fantasy. Distance becomes possibility. Calm people feel boring not because they lack depth, but because they do not provide unresolved tension. Peace is not passive, it is powerful. Composure holds gravity without chasing validation. It selects alignment over chaos. Clarity over drama. While unpredictability excites anxiety, composure sustains wisdom. 7. Curiosity versus craving. Curiosity is light, craving is heavy. Curiosity observes, craving clings. Craving breeds fear of loss, fear of not being chosen. And when worth depends on approval, peace disappears. But when this is seen, craving dissolves and curiosity returns. 8. Emotional sovereignty. Nothing outside your control deserves authority over your inner world. When silence or inconsistency dictates your emotions, power has been given away. Sovereignty means feeling without dependence, desiring without surrendering identity. Asking not why wasn't I chosen, but why did I need to be? And in that question, patterns collapse. 9. Why silence loses power. As self-respect grows, chaos loses appeal. Silence becomes neutral. Distance loses magnetism. Clarity replaces confusion. Excitement comes from alignment, not unpredictability. Emotion becomes a tool, not a leash. And finally, 10, the final realization. This philosophy was never about comfort. It was about freedom. Freedom from compulsive desire, emotional dependence, and internal chaos. Awareness may feel uncomfortable, but it is liberation. Mastery is not over others, but over yourself. And when that mastery is embodied, peace becomes untouchable. Uncertainty loses authority. And freedom becomes internal, permanent, and unshakable. Remember this. Your worth was never in attention. It was always within you. And if this insight stayed with you until now, it means something in you is already changing.